Thanks for braving the LA weather this morning.
Which one? Am I here?
So terrible out there.
Trying to make it
making it somewhat on
trying to make
time.
me feel like it's always I.
Yeah. We've got a great group of people here today. Unfortunately, looks like Jason Pinsky couldn't make it. He is sick at home. This is the Cannabis Visionaries Media Technology Legalization Panel. Again, incredible people here today. Very glad to be a part of it. My name is Drake Sutton-Shearer. I'm the CEO and founder of Prohibited. We create, build, and market cannabis brands to global audiences. We also own an original content studio and the largest multi-platform video network in the cannabis industry. So I'm going to let these fine folks here introduce themselves, and then we'll hop into it. Mike?
Hey everybody, good morning. I'm Big Mike. I am the owner of Advanced Nutrients and Big Mike's Blends. We are currently, our products are in 100 countries around the world. That's Advanced Nutrients. We're the most profitable company in cannabis. I've been in the space for 19 years with Advanced Nutrients. For the last 14 years, I've had 25 PhDs and a cannabinoid research license. There's only 3 of those in the world. GW has one in the UK, and Tikkun Olam in Israel, and then us in Bulgaria. So that's what I do.
Wow. Adam Levin, CEO of High Times, the most recognizable brand in cannabis, and just glad to be here with great people.
Eric Shevin, I'm an attorney. I've been representing cannabis clients for over 25 years, originally as a criminal defense lawyer, and then as these same clients became business people, my practice has transitioned into a business consulting practice, corporate practice, compliance, regulatory work, representing cultivators, manufacturers, dispensaries, investors, and other people trying to navigate these ever-changing laws.
Clement Kwan, I'm the founder of Bebo. Spent 15 years in the fashion luxury world as an executive, working for and running brands like Dolce & Gabbana, Net-a-Porter, but started my life as a banker, but also a cannabis grower when I was at Berkeley. So love this industry, and thank you for having me.
Susan Soares. I was a Republican Orange County soccer mom leader in the Mormon Church when I was 33 years old, and I sustained a head injury which left me with a 2-year migraine headache. I finally had to abandon my entire community and family because I found that cannabis was my cure. And so I promised myself that when I raised my 3 children, that I would dedicate my life to changing minds that thought like I did. And so I started CARE. It's a 501c3 nonprofit organization. I do a 2-day annual conference where I bring together regulators, elected officials, and business leaders. This year it's going to be September 25th and 26th on the Queen Mary. I also do a celebrity gifting house event during the second weekend of Coachella where I gift the artists that are performing all kinds of really cool, innovative cannabis brands, and I'm the weed fairy. They love me.
All right, guys, thanks for coming here. Nice. Okay, so let's talk about educating the mainstream. Everybody up here is part of that movement and being responsible for helping to do that. How do you guys think that we kind of, and should we move people away from calling it pot and reefer? Because everywhere I look, whether it's CNBC or somebody else, it's always the pot business, right? And do you guys think that it needs to be moved to cannabis or something else?
Yeah, I like to refer to people as patients who use cannabis, and they medicate. And we do have to change the stigma that has been associated and rammed down our throats, basically just false information, lies, as you can call it, for the last 50 years. We're in a bubble here. In Los Angeles, Colorado, we're kind of in a cannabis bubble. When we step outside of that bubble and you go into the mainstream world, what's happening is there's a total lack of education. They think that pot users are degenerates and all kinds of stereotypical things. We need to move away from that. We need the media to stop showing all the people that are very unique in our space and show Main Street America. That has to happen. In fact, 2 days ago, I had a premiere for a documentary I did on PTSD and veterans. And there was, and cannabis is, I don't know if you're aware of this, but approximately 22 veterans every day in America take their own lives because of PTSD, and they're on opiates, and cannabis is an answer for most of them, and we showed that in the documentary. But here's what happened. At the end, there was a Marine. He goes, and he was in his 40s, maybe 50s, he goes, I thought all potheads, people who smoke pot, were losers. He goes, I just changed my mind when I watched this documentary. So one of the things that we're doing, we're putting out a series of documentaries. You don't make money on documentaries, folks, but it's to educate society. So this one is called Mile Marker. It's out now. I have another one coming out. It's in post right now. It's called CBD, the Miracle Molecule, and we will be doing more and more of these because education is paramount to moving our industry into the mainstream.
Cool. Thanks, Mike. You guys?
I'd like to hear what Adam has to say about using the word
Yeah, I mean, I think
weed
stereotypes lead to discrimination, and discrimination in any way is not good for society. And today, I smoke I smoke often and am a functioning executive most of the time. But there's many people in all walks of life that have depended on it in an illegal society, cannabis, for whether it be the migraines that you suffered or to deal with anxieties of daily stress. And it's finally a time that people are starting to take note of the medicinal benefits, and that's what's I'm actually really appreciative of all the work that's being done and the stereotypes we're overcoming today, as much as anything. I mean, I think those barriers are being broken.
Clement, you have a cannabis lifestyle brand, right, with Bebo, that's very fashion forward and progressive. How do you feel about the way that people are portrayed, or cannabis consumers or patients are portrayed out there?
I think what we wanted to do was start a brand that resonated with people who were, I guess, build something that was familiar with more sophisticated consumers. So we don't really get caught like weed, stoner, et cetera, we kind of build off of that because that's what will definitely change the perception. So Bebo is, cornily enough, the New York Times called this the Hermes of marijuana, but we'll take it because it's familiar to people, and in that sense, it starts the conversation. So I think it's education through product, and then we can say, hey, look at Big Mike's documentary, because then you can learn more about CBD. But I think the initial take is really beautiful product. They try it, and they're like, oh shit, this is good. I want to learn more. So that's kind of our take on Bebo and how we approach the industry.
Nice.
I'm really fortunate because I don't have a company and people telling me what to say. I was on the Woody Show a couple weeks ago, and they said, "Are you high right now?" And they went, "Oh, I guess we can't say that." And I said, "Yeah, you can. I am high right now." And usually
were they drunk, Susan?
And
were they drunk as well as you?
Well, right.
Exactly.
And I said, I like that side effect, euphoria. I don't know if you've looked at the side effects of your pharmaceutical drugs that you're taking, but I'll take euphoria any day.
I would just add to that I think it's clear that we have reached an irreversible momentum on the acceptance of cannabis.
Yes.
Now that we have more than half the states providing access to medical cannabis and more than half the population in the country with access to recreational cannabis, now that California came online, it's just an undeniable message that is being sent through the world. California, as we know, probably just heard, is the 5th largest economy in the world. So the messaging that comes out of that is just so powerful. I think that everyone here, whether you're a cannabis user or not, knows somebody who benefits from medical cannabis. And that is just information that when you find someone that you know that you love who's suffering, and that suffering is alleviated and it's by cannabis, whether you want to talk about it or not, you're intrigued by it, you want to try it, and every demographic, every walk of life is exposed to that now. So I think it's just an inevitable, change and transition away from those negative stereotypes. But these are attitudes that were built on the earliest form of corporate corruption. That's what it is. The hemp movement is the beginning of the cannabis movement. And what we've seen now is with this current generation of users that came out of the medical cannabis movement, that hemp message has been lost. They don't realize that it was a conspiracy against this plant that, you know, was based on the cotton industry and the paper industry and people that were really looking to get rid of their their competition in hemp. So, I mean, we're at this point, it's exciting. You know, personally, you know, representing people in every aspect of the industry, whether you call it pot, weed, I call it weed because it's just what I grew up with. You know, and the negative and, you know, stereotypes and stigmas in the eyes of the person who's interpreting that. Right. You know, my son just got busted. He's a high school student, 17 years old. On 4/20, he posted an image on Snapchat smoking a blunt. I didn't even know the guy's smoking. Here he is firing up a blunt, and the school got a screenshot of it, and the little caption was, "Shout out to my homies on 4/20 smoking my devil lettuce." And I'm like, wow. Devil lettuce? So, you know, I mean, that's certainly a negative term, but I thought it was cute, you know, so. But I think the truth behind the plant and the benefits of this incredible plant, and the more we're going to learn about our entire bodies functioning based on an endocannabinoid system. Our bodies function on cannabis that we produce in our body. We produce THC naturally. So it's only you know, natural that we would find that benefits in the plant will come from a body that functions on the plant. So it's the beginning of a lot of information that's only going to continue to take away the stigma, I believe.
Cool. Thanks, Eric. Anybody, can we get a show of hands here if you're open to it? Who's a cannabis user or patient?
Come on.
All right.
All right.
Everyone.
There we go. All right. Nice to see. So cannabis, this is also partly a technology panel. So let's talk a little bit about, look, this crypto and this cannabis. These two particular categories are what investors globally are saying the most investable categories in the world. We would probably agree up here for sure. But what are some ways that you guys feel technology is helping the cannabis community, helping to educate patients or consumers, helping to, you know, deliver cannabis direct to consumer? What are some ways that you've seen or that you're involved in that may help educate the audience here?
Well, you mentioned ICO and cannabis, or cryptocurrency. I was ready to do an ICO, and I took a pass on it. And everybody's looking for a solution for payment, and I get that. Here's the thing, though. Whoever builds that solution is going to put a lot of resources into it, and yeah, it can be done. But here's the thing. 3 years from now, 4 years from now, the federal government's going to throw in the towel. It's probably going to happen within 2 years, actually. And banks are going to come on board, and you've just took a lot of your resources and time building an unsustainable model that can be taken away from you. Plus, ICO by itself is pretty dicey because of you have to get a payment system has to be adopted by everybody. That's kind of like the wall with it. And it just would have put too big of a target on anybody in cannabis. If you think about doing an ICO and cannabis, I opted out.
Yeah. If you watch Silicon Valley, you can kind of get their take too.
The addressable market's huge. I mean, you think about payments and where it is, but when you consider the regulatory system today and the regulatory actions taken by feds in regards to marijuana, but specifically the crypto world, it's a solution that's not going to happen in this day and age.
But how about like delivery, right? Or how about like educating consumers? You know, we're going to talk about content a little bit later, but I mean.
Well, the real education has to be, it's not strains. Look, we came out of a grower-centric environment. Farmers, growers, they care about strains. Patients care about outcomes. We need to start selling the outcomes because that's what patients want. They want pain relief. They want relief from anxiety. They want to sleep better. They don't necessarily want, you know, super yellow lemon haze or, you know, silver haze or whatever it is, because it really doesn't mean much to them. So when that kind of gets straightened out and we start delivering outcomes, and great ones at that, the market will change dramatically.
Sure.
I think the vape pen has really changed the market because it's discreet and it's brought the soccer moms in. It's clean, you know.
What are you using over there?
This is King Extracts. It's a nice size. This case holds the pen.
Brought to you by.
It also charges the pen 10 times. Yay.
So vape pens are great, and the reason why, because the future of cannabis is flower sales are going down every year. What's going to be the future is a recombinant product, and that means you're going to grow wherever you're going to grow your cannabis, you're going to harvest it, you're going to do a bulk extraction, and then you're going to fractionate out all the different terpenes and cannabinoids and recombine them. Because it doesn't matter if you're in Tokyo, London, or Los Angeles, that outcome has to be exactly the same. If I grow the same cutting from the same mother plant in 5 different greenhouses or 5 different grow rooms, I will have a different cannabinoid and terpene profile in every single one of those. It's just how it is. So it has to go to science, it has to go into a laboratory environment where it can be separated out and recombined for exactly the way the patient wants it. The future of cannabis is going to be extracted product. I guarantee you that, because it's the fastest growing segment of cannabis. Why? Not only just vape pens, but think about pills, think about lotions, tinctures, all that can use extracts, cooking, edibles, it's all from extracts.
You know, the pressure point in the industry right now is the lack of consistency and reliability. And the only way we're going to get to that, as Mike said, is through the science. And, you know, whether you're getting source material that's one strain or another, at the end of the day, the consumers are going to be the arbiters of whether your product is going to survive. And that's going to only apply to people that can do a consistent, reliable product. Ultimately, the technology, I think, that is more important than anything, and it goes into content as well, is social media. I mean, right now we're looking at 350 retail approximately in the state of California, and this time last year there were thousands upon thousands. So shelf space is a premium right now. Even if you produce a product, how do you get it on a shelf? And the only way to do that is to demonstrate that there's consumer demand. And really, it's Instagram. I mean, you walk into a dispensary and say, I've got 100,000 followers on Instagram, they're going to take your product. But a distributor can't return product to a wholesaler, and a retail can't return product to a distributor. So these entities are going to be very careful and cautious about products that they're taking in order to get into the supply chain. So marketing through social media and that technology and the production of content, there's nothing more important to getting a product into the market.
Just echoing on
Clement, with Bebo, right? How has delivery technologies kind of changed your business or helped your business, or what are some of those challenges, perhaps?
I ran Net-a-Porter and Ukes, which are e-commerce companies, and going from high tech, which is sales depending upon technology, to low tech was a big shock. Because here there aren't any POS systems, there aren't a lot of built-out infrastructure. So wins for me are like getting verified by Instagram. We're the first brand that got verified, first cannabis brand being verified by Instagram, and we're like, wow, that's amazing. But we sort of just build off of that because that's being verified opens up us to more views, likes, and then I can walk into the store and say, hey, look at my beach muscles, you should carry me because I have 40,000 followers, etc., and I'm verified. So I think technology isn't necessarily in play right now, it's just the little steps to get there. So proper POS, getting the right CRM data, looking at LTV, who's buying your product, and not just going like this and saying, oh, you know what, 79% of the customers are female. It's like there's no data to back it up. So we're just taking little steps by and celebrating being verified by Instagram as that first step.
Yeah.
Cool.
And he mentioned data collection. Data is going to be huge, is huge if you're using it in the right way. But data will give us a clear picture on exactly targeting a specific audience with a specific outcome and product, for sure. And so we need more analytics, and that is a spot that there'll be a lot of growth in.
For sure. So let's talk about content for a little bit. We are at Digital Hollywood. So, arguably the voice of his generation, Donald Glover lights up a joint on his new single and video. It's a phenomenon, and yet Disjointed was canceled. One is very cool, youthful, and progressive, and the other perhaps is regressive. What do you guys think about the way that cannabis is portrayed and on with content?
Wow. We have a long way to go, obviously, and you're going to see more and more, as cannabis becomes more accepted, and education is going to drive that, and people's societal norms towards it change. You'll see a lot of different programs. Really, the problem is a lot of these corporations are publicly held companies and have shareholders, and federally they would be putting their shareholders into an illegal situation, which they can't do. So as the feds get closer and closer to throwing in the towel, and it's happening now, by the way, you'll start seeing more and more quality shows coming out. And by the way, our community should push quality shows and not just your typical, like, disjointed, we'll call it stoner stuff, because let's face it, our community isn't made up of just stoners. It's made up of every single person here. All of you raised your hands, practically 90% of you raised your hands. I don't know, like, maybe some of you are stoners, maybe you aren't, but most of you people look like good, upstanding citizens here, and that's who we have to communicate with.
Nice, Mike.
I think big blockbuster Hollywood needs to take a look at the characters that are in the cannabis industry. Not so much the industry, but I mean, look at the end of alcohol prohibition and the big blockbuster films that came out of that. The character-driven stories that were told in big Hollywood films and how successful they were. We all know some characters. Trust me, they're out there.
You know, I love stoners and tie-dyed hippies. You know, that's the backbone of this industry. We wouldn't be having this conversation if it wasn't for the efforts these people made, their civil disobedience, and their rejection of, you know, government on this issue. That said, it's just an ever-declining demographic and segment of the market. And I think that we're seeing that, whether it's disjointed, not being able to sustain itself, or this new world where you have all kinds of celebrities entering the space with their own product lines, whether, you know, Whoopi Goldberg, and I mean, you name it, they're all out there. You know, if you Google celebrity, you know, investors in cannabis, it's everybody. All the athletes coming in from NBA, NFL, I mean, it's crossing over to every aspect of society, and then the investment monies that are coming in are coming from traditional investment capital now. So I think those demographics are really the majority that we're going to see that need to be marketed to, and, you know, the analytics are going to help identify who those target markets are, and we're going to see products like Bebo is marketed to a very refined clientele. We're going to see products marketed to those demographics, and I imagine there'll still be products marketed to stoners and tie-dyed hippies, and, you know, but everyone will want their own thing, but it's going to take time to develop what those targets and those demographics are.
But I think Hollywood's realizing that the demographics are changing, and, you know, I think you look at, you know, Netflix and Disjointed, which, you know, I think Disjointed and that stoner comedy didn't work, not necessarily because that comedy wasn't relevant and you know, we didn't enjoy it, but the show just wasn't great, to be honest.
It sucked.
It sucked. I mean,
Cheech and Chong is still, you know, funnier than Shed. So.
I mean, exactly. Yeah. You know, there's still great people in this stoner culture, you know, and I run a stoner brand. I mean, listen, High Times, a lot of the content we do today resonates with all different audiences, and we're starting to migrate. We're migrating content, but there's still a place for that stoner comedy, that, you know, and stoner content that people want, and there's still that, you know, nascent culture there that's definitely a part of the society and part of the culture.
I'm going to jump in here. Look, this recreational market, you can call it, that's where all the money is right now. Like, the majority of the money is in rec. They're the ones that have the technology. They're the ones that figured out how to make extracted products. They're the ones who've been doing this for the last 40, 50 years. They're the taste makers. They're the influencers to what gets out to the dispensaries and to mainstream. Do not kid yourself for 1 second. Respect the culture now while it is migrating into a different culture. But right now, if you ignore that culture, you're ignoring all the money, which is not very smart.
You know, being in this industry, I realized that we are an agent for change. I think, you know, Big Mike, Adam, you know, Shevin, I mean, we make a difference. So next month I'm speaking to, you know, business school students at Stanford. I work with Andrew Yang at Venture for America. He's crazily enough running for president. I work for Prep for Prep because I grew up with a traditional Chinese mother that gave me 3 options for a career: doctor, lawyer, banker. And I chose banker, fashion, cannabis. And
Jewish moms weren't much different.
exactly. So what I realized was, I think I am a stoner. I'm not a big-time stoner, but I was a pot grower, a stoner. I felt guilt and shame for doing so, but it got me to this point today. And cannabis is a viable career choice. And I think stigmas change when people like us are in the industry that we're respectable. I mean, at least on the outside, right? And
That's to be debated for sure.
But like people who are growing up, like your teenage son, it's okay to get into cannabis. It's okay to forego, your banking job to do cannabis and take a risk and be entrepreneurs. So I think that is what I truly learned. And I think media is great. I mean, they talk about it, it breaks stigma, but we are the people who can make change first and foremost.
Yeah, it's the stories, right? It's the stories that everyone's telling that's real. It's interesting. A new survey came out this morning from Miner & Co. Did anybody see this on cannabis content? 4 out of 5, this is about 15,000 people were on this panel. This company, Miner & Co., are out in New York. They do a lot of TV and film development and research to help studios and creative companies have more accuracy in what they're producing. It says 4 out of 5 are more likely to watch shows that positively portray cannabis consumers, and 72% say too many TV shows portray cannabis as stereotypical, silly, and forgetful stoners. So
Yeah.
that seems that
Just say no.
Times are changing.
people are getting on board.
Right, exactly.
So let's talk about entertainment and experience, right? Susan, you do an experiential event in Coachella. Adam, you do the Cannabis Cup. Everyone else here participates in one way or another. Let's talk about that. Susan?
Talk about events.
Yeah, experience. Yeah.
Well, right now I'm focusing on getting SB 2020 passed so that we can have events in places other than fairgrounds. Because right now that's the law. You have to have a cannabis event where there's sales or sampling on a fairground, and there are not very many of those in Southern California, and 2 out of the 6 or so don't like it. So.
Well, it's Pomona, right? Pomona Fairgrounds?
Costa Mesa doesn't like it, and Del Mar doesn't like it.
They're coming around. I mean, I think fairgrounds are coming around. I think, listen, the current legislation, and I think the BCC's been pretty proactive about realizing the mistakes and the issues and some of the difficulties with the current policies. And, that's what being a trailblazer is about changing those policies and changing the laws and the restrictions. And, we just got approved for our second Cannabis Cup, which is the second
in
legal.
Santa Rosa.
In Santa Rosa.
Yay.
It's a hard process, and you're working with all the municipalities and all of these different decision makers, and you get one fire marshal who doesn't like cannabis, and he's putting a stop sign up for your whole event. So it's been a tricky process to work within them, but with some of the changes, it could make it a much more enjoyable and safe process for consumption.
Yeah, the bottom line is, I had Betty Yee speak on at my conference a couple of years ago, and she said, if we regulate this industry properly, we will see a 20% increase in tourism because of cannabis events and experiences. We're not seeing that. We have to have more access to have experiences.
So how do you guys deal with that, right? So Adam, with Cannabis Cup, you've got hundreds of vendors, right? How do you
hopefully thousands,
hopefully thousands, millions. So how do you guys deal with all that, right? Because you can announce a show, right, and it's incredibly challenging because the landscape is changing, it's complex. You can announce a show. How do you kind of mitigate the risk of putting on that show and hoping,
you're an entrepreneur like any other entrepreneur, and you're making an investment and hopefully making an educated investment based on your perceived risk and what the perceived risk is. And you move forward. But, with this changing landscapes, we've had issues. We, had our first event in San Bernardino, quashed, 4 days before due to a new regulation put in by a municipality 9 days prior to that.
That's tough. Yeah.
And so things come up, and things will happen. But hopefully the good outweigh the bad, and, you continue to persevere.
Cool.
There's also private events. These are giant events we're talking about. But I get a lot of calls from people who say, hey, I want to put a pot bar at this private party. Can I do that? Or an infused dinner where I'm going to sell tickets to this. And these are all organized events, and it still remains to be seen how the BCC will come in and try to regulate those things. The whole idea of regulating cannabis, it's beyond daunting. I don't think you'll ever be able to regulate this industry. It goes back too many generations with no regs where people do what they want to do, and I think that will always be the case. But there's always a workaround. Cannabis users are going to do what they want to do, and if you want to have a private party and have cannabis there, there's a way to do it. I mean, there's ways to do all these things, but it still remains to be seen how these regulations will be enforced. Because right now in California, we're barely 5 months into this whole new world, and we're still dealing with emergency regulations.
But the workarounds don't help your sponsors. We've got to protect our sponsors. We've got to be able to do it and advertise boldly and,
well, that's a good point. Like one example of a workaround is the BCC is regulating license holders, and brands are often not license holders. So can a brand ambassador go and promote his product if he's in possession of his own legal cannabis that he has a right to possess because he's a patient and he can have 8 ounces of concentrate and it's legal to give away up to 8 grams to any person who's an adult? So I'm just saying there are laws you can comply with, but still the BCC will continue to develop rules to both restrict and hopefully allow these types of activities to take place.
So Eric, on that note, sorry, and Adam, so 5th largest economy in the world, unbelievable, yet the most complex and challenging cannabis legal and regulatory landscape in the world as well. What are some of kind of the predictions to come, or that you guys are hearing, or any kind of challenges that you're having right now that you could share, or that you're looking to work through?
I mean, I think, listen, everyone's seen the delays in getting permits from the BCC, but we've been pretty impressed by their actions and how they act so quickly.
Right.
And I think that's encouraging. And I think, we're talking about California, we're in Los Angeles, but you look at other markets and they're not as progressive, but they're also, you might have more lax legislation today for consumption events and even for brands. But we are in the 5th largest market in 5th largest economy in the world, and that says something. And so we're playing within these new walls and these new rules that are limiting at times and frustrating at all times.
And by the way, the state of California has expressed interest in opening up their own banks for the cannabis sector here in this state. The only issue you run into is when you have to make a wire transfer. Now you're dealing with the federal thing. Now we're the 5th largest economy. I believe if we had our own banking system within the state, we would be a self-sustaining model for sure. And they should move and press forward to that, because banking is a huge issue. Once we get that fixed and the taxation, 280E, wow, watch out. And by the way, the real big money hasn't come into our industry yet. They're still lurking on the outside waiting for the federal laws to change. When that changes or gets closer to changing, watch what happens. The real bubble will come then. Yep. It's not now.
Totally agree.
The other thing on laws is, again, as we're starting to work towards permanent regulations, we're still in a grace period right now in California that's coming to an end July 1st. And there is going to be a drastic change in the industry in terms of access to medicine, people that are going to be able to survive the bottlenecks that will exist in testing. During the grace period, product doesn't have to be tested, it has to be labeled, it's not tested. Starting July 1st, everything has to be tested and labeled as such. Pre-existing inventory that's not tested can't even be sold. So, where are all these testing labs that are going to support the products that support this entire California industry? I mean, you saw what happened in Oregon, or what did happen is sometimes it was 2 to 3 months before a flower that was harvested could make it into a dispensary because there were delays in the testing facilities. So, I mean, it's going to be very difficult to get product on the shelves for people to get that product properly tested and for dispensaries to access that product. A lot of distributors are claiming that they're holding on to this tested inventory right now to bring it into the market, but just watch after July 1st, it's going to be a different landscape.
That's also very challenging for advertisers, right, for brands who are looking to build their businesses, because the regs are changing and there are packaging problems. There's so many challenges there too. You probably have them, right?
Oh yeah, it's a moving target right now. And just remember, the person who's the most flexible is the person who'll do the best through all this. So we're going to go through a lot of undulations, and we just got to hang in there, and we have to make sure that our voice is heard and the right people are listening.
Cool. All right, guys, so we're going to wrap up. We've got some time for Q&A. Any questions? Do we have a microphone, AV? Okay, cool. We can yell.
Right.
So the question was, what are some of the challenges facing marketing and advertising in cannabis?
All right, I've had to deal with this for the last 19 years, so I'm kind of an expert at it. Look, the platforms won't allow you to run advertising with the word cannabis, marijuana, or pictures in there. That has got to change. I don't know if it will, because a lot of these companies won't allow, tobacco or alcohol even. So it's going to be very interesting to see what they're doing. So that you have to figure out workarounds in those environments, and they can be quite challenging. But once you get it down, it's actually pretty easy.
The cannabis strains right now, you have all these names, strawberry shortcake, cookies and cream, and these are names that will likely not be allowed under the current regs because it's attractive to minors. So you're going to see a huge shift in terms of what products are called, how they're portrayed, what the logos are. Canna Kids. I mean, here you have, a girl who has brain cancer and has alleviated that through cannabis, and they have a brand. And they can't even use her to promote the brand because she's a child. So, seeing where that falls, you can't have gummies in the shape of animals anymore. They'll have, discs and diamonds and stars, but we'll see this shift happen as well. And I think for purposes of marketing, branding, social media, you're gonna really have to start shifting, because you'll see the brands right now, and they have a lot more creative license to promote, that they're gonna have to limit that, definitely.
Yeah, they did. They spent $2 million to help the industry, which is great. I think too, the other thing is that if you're just talking about digital advertising, with straight up, media buys, paid media, it's a different story than if you're integrating brands or experiences into content and distributing content, video content across a network, right, where it's integrated as part of the narrative. That's one way, but that's more of an awareness opportunity than an actual kind of last mile commerce opportunity.
And there's a big opportunity for people who want to build cannabis platforms for advertising. You got, a platform like Mantis out there. Sure. We need more of them. We need people. Look, 2 years ago, the people's feelings towards cannabis were really pretty aggressive against it. A lot of folks. That over the last year, that changed, and now a year later, it's starting to really, people's perceptions and attitudes are changing dramatically. It's happening really, really fast. So I would like to see a huge company get involved and just start soliciting and building platforms specifically for cannabis. They will stand the test of time for a while.
One more question, then we're good. Hi.
Mm-hmm. 21 H30 for basically our genetic method. So if you drink like a Coca-Cola, you get phosphorus acid, which is the backbone of the DNA. You have a sugar molecule that attaches to the backbone. And then you have the nucleic acid, which is contains carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, right, which is found in the air. So these items, they connect together, and it creates a double helix for the DNA. Now, with this, my theory is that the more usage of cannabis will activate dormant cells or dormant genetic makeup that wasn't previously been able to access. That's why we're able to isolate, like the American Cancer Society website said that they isolated cancer cells in a dish in a laboratory setting, and they introduced cannabis to it, and it actually destroyed the cancer cells. Now, with this research, what do you think? Do you think this will change the way the public views cannabis?
Absolutely.
I'm not sure how to reiterate that question.
Well, here's the big solution. The more science that gets involved with cannabis, the better off the society is going to be. Listen, genetics matter. There's a woman, I'll give you a quick story. There was a woman, tried an edible 20 years ago, had a horrible, horrible time with it. Okay, didn't want to try it. So she says, you know, I'm going to try cannabis again. So she ate another edible again and even had a worse experience. So we said, listen, why don't we look at your genetics? Sure enough, there was an anomaly, and she could not digest THC. So she had a hard time with it. Now, had you known that, you'd say, okay, then you want to use a vaping, or you want to use a topical, or you will use a sublingual, but you do not want to send it through the liver system because you don't have the proper enzyme to take care of the THC. So genetics is going to play a big, big part, and we'll be able to look in, and we can already do that. There's hundreds already of SNPs that we have identified for different ailments and stuff, and more of that work will be done in the future.
Cool. Anybody else? We're good? All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.